Greetings. This is Arvette McLean with Speak, the Universe Listens. New ways to view age-old challenges. Change your thoughts, change your life. Step into the bigness of you.
So, they say that your financial status is really the basis of your thinking. And so, like a lot of times we think, well, this person had an advantage over me, so, they had a head start. So how can it be a factor of my own thinking? It's really a factor of society, it's a factor of, where do I work, etc. But there's a theory out that however the wealth is distributed currently, if you gave every single person $1 million, in a couple of years, everybody who's poor now would be poor again. So what do y'all think about that?
I can see that. Just going off of like not having, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere receiving something like that, and not knowing, just not believing that I could have it, and I finally get it, and I just I just blow it. So I'm somewhat agree with that.
I can see that from the standpoint of the mental never switch. Like you gave a poor person $1 million, but their mind was still a poor person. Yeah. So I can see how they would be poor again.
Yeah, and for me it makes sense to me in the 3D stance of, yeah, you could give somebody $1 million, but just like what both of them just said, if the mindset is the same, then the outcome is the same.
And so why do you say that's from a 3D stance?
No, yeah, I think it's a 3D stance because, it's all about the thinking. So the money wasn't what's changing. So for me, when I hear, you could give everybody in the world $1 million and the poor people would still be poor, it's because the money was never the thing. It was a mindset thing for me. And so I say 3D because the only thing that changed was a monetary thing. So that's how it all leads to the same place because, like in the 3D stance, I would say, oh yeah, you give me $1 million, my life would be instantly better. But if I'm not changing how I'm viewing the world, then I'm not changing anything at all.
I think just that from experience-wise, thinking like that, never have it, and then all of a sudden I start to receive the things that I always wanted. I remember I used to have a hard time trying to put my mindset on, like, trying to get away from the lack mentality because that's all that I ever do. So now I'm starting to get what I always wanted. It was like, all right, I have my moments as to where I go back to that, man, penny pinching. Like, man, I can't afford these shoes right here, but, I don't want to spend no money. I don't want to spend $100 on those, and I know I can get it, so why don't I just go get it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to sort of get away from that. It took time, but I had to realize that, hey, you're not in lack. You have. And so if I continue to keep that mindset, then I notice that things start to flow in abundance instead of lack.
Yeah, I related to that fully, honestly. It was, I was so funny. I was just sitting in my house the other day, and I was looking at a bracelet, and I was like, yeah, man, why can't I afford that right now? And I was like, well, why can't I afford it right now? And I was like, well, because the bank ain't in your, like the money ain't in your bank right now, that's why you can't afford it. And I was like, what? That also still ain't it though. I was like, well, why can't I afford this bracelet? And then, like, it took me to, like, sit down and realize, well, the only thing that was ever stopped me from getting it was I felt it was too expensive. And the minute that I felt that I was worthy of it, it would be the moment that I'm going to buy that bracelet. For some reason, I'm still working on removing that veil of, oh, well, I shouldn't buy something this expensive yet. So I think, just to piggyback off what you said, that lack mentality, there's moments I felt like I got away from it, but it still like shows its head like every now and then, like in like random situations, honestly.
I think both of y'all say key words. You say that when you first started talking, and then you just said it about worthiness. And so I think that's what it all boils down to. So we don't feel like we're worthy. And one thing I think that we don't really understand is that goodness is always flowing to us. Like there's no lack of goodness. Like the universe, God is just flowing everything we want in our direction. But we tend to think that if we do something good, then God might reward us, or they'll be like, oh, I got the favor of God, you know, something like that. But really, God is just sending all goodness, all blessings our way. But we're cutting off the blessing. We're like stopping it because we don't feel worthy of it.
Yeah, and the worthiness is huge because, like, for example, it's been a time where it's like, I remember some years ago, like a manager position opened up at my job, and it was like, I had been doing everything to prep for this position. Like, it's like, everybody like, you know, apply. And I came up with every excuse to why I shouldn't, you know, and it's like, the things we'll start telling ourselves when we don't feel worthy, like, you know, you can't do this, you can't tell somebody what to do, and you can't manage all this. Like, we just think of all these things, but it's really, in here, we don't feel like we're worthy of it. Yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest things I had to overcome, the worthiness part of it, because it was just, I was so trapped with the mindset of just being attached to not being worthy, that when it came time to just realize that everything that I asked for, all of a sudden, it's literally like right there in front of me. All I gotta do is just sit back and just put my foot through the door and boom, I'm there. But I was so attached to the mindset of just not being worthy that I was cutting myself off on my own lesson. You know, and I think some people do that to themselves, not willingly, of course, but just cutting their own blessings off. And it's like, all you got to do is just sit back and realize your own potential, your power that you have. So.
And like you say, some people, but I would almost venture to say most people. And I feel like all of us can do a better job at owning our work and stepping into it more fully.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we look at worthiness as, okay, what can we do? What can we bring to the table? I think one of y'all said this before, but it's like a lot of times we don't think we're worthy of something until we do something. Like, all right, I got to do this and this first before I can do this, or before I'm worthy of this, or before I deserve this. And a lot of times it's like, no, you're already worthy of that now, you know. And it's like we feel like we gotta do something physical to be worthy of something, when the worthiness is already inside.
And what about people who were born into poverty, or you got whole communities, like let's just say in the African American community, where resources aren't equal, opportunities aren't equal, things like that. So I think a lot of people would say, well, African Americans are on the poor side of the scale because the society isn't set up for their success. So what would you say about that?
That's a good question. I think the problem with that is that everybody thinks with that mindset of thinking that we are. You know what I'm saying? We are below the wealth pole pretty much, instead of having the mindset of being like, well, you know what, I'm worthy, or we already have that abundance, but we're so used to hearing, you know, the lack mindset versus the mindset of wealth.
focus put on the how, like in terms, like even, okay, if you believe that and that's your stance, I think too much attention is put on the how do I change that instead of just actively changing the way that you're feeling and thinking about it. I think it's too much of, well, we need to do this and fix this, or we need to do this and step here and work hard here in order to get this. But nobody's ever really thinking like, well, the first thing I need to do is one, stop thinking so much about the process.
Right.
Like, we get bogged down with the process of how do I change this, or how do I do that, or well, how do I change my thinking on it. And the first step is to do, like, or to be. So if you feel that there's a financial like gap between African Americans and other groups, then the first thing you should do is to try and see yourself at the same level that you might be seeing them if you see yourself lower than them, or to also speak into like all the things that you feel are very important and strong to you, and like really pour in there, and then I feel like it'll just all come back out around. I think I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about that part of the topic a lot actually. It's just too much thought on how to change the system instead of how to change ourselves.
I know Dana Blau always says the problem is not the problem. The problem is that you're talking about the problem.
But I used to, I remember as a kid, like me, I was always somebody that just always thought I was going to be rich. But anyway, I used to ask all the time, like, what does all the people that came from nothing and became rich have in common? And I used to always ask that question and wonder, like, what's the one thing? Gotta be one thing. And what I told myself the answer is that they believe in themselves. And I think it just starts, that's like one of the biggest starting points, like just believing that you can be something different, or that's something, like believing that you can, and that you have it already in you.
I think like with that, Brian, I think when we start to sit back and even what you said, so I pick back up a little bit of what you were saying, basically, when you start to be and you put yourself in that type of energy, you're just going to make things, you're going to become contagious. It's just going to spread it off. So instead of thinking about the problem, everybody's going to be thinking more about, the solution. You know, like it's not a problem. We're going to start being. So.
And I think there's a stigma or it's like this thing in the Black community. I remember you actually talking to me about it, and from a personal perspective. But it's like you don't feel like you're supposed to be ahead because it's like you're betraying. You're betraying the race because you're, you know. And I mean, but the truth is, I can't be poor enough to help you.
That's true. That's true.
And I guess kind of what you kind of said was you start seeing into what you want to be, start feeling into that, start believing in your ability to be that, start feeling into your worthiness. And so even though that's an individual pursuit, as you're doing that, the people around you who are watching are like, what you doing over there? And then once they see, oh, that's what you got to do, and then they'll start doing it too. And so I don't know that anybody can convince another person, you know, like change the way you're thinking, feel worthy, vibrate higher. I don't know if I could like teach a class and then everybody from that class would take a test and now they're competent in that. But I do know that if they're watching someone who's doing that, then they're just like, what are you doing? And let me see if I can do that too.
I agree with you on that. I really do, because I remember when I was just like in my very beginning stages of just learning about spirituality and just leveling myself up, that I was working on myself so much that people started to ask me questions, right? And like, well, you know, why do you do this? Or how come think that's just been normal for anybody, instead of just being in the space of knowing that you really don't physically have to see it. It's already, you already can do it. You just have to have it in your mind.
Yeah, instead of seeing to believe,
Right.
believe to
Just
see.
Mm-hmm.
Copyright that.
I think that's already what I'm saying.
Somebody just said it first.
Yeah, but we give so much of our attention to the current reality, to what our eyes can see, and then we're basing how we feel and what we're thinking on what our eyes can see. And so when we can remove that as our criteria for deciding what's possible for us, then that's when we have the biggest chances of expanding. And so when we realize that we're really all of this, all of this, all of this, we're all of this, and all of this is available to us at all times, even though you can't see it, it's there. And so once you start believing it's there, then you will start to see it. And I know that's like a hard concept for a long time. You know, I had heard that for years and I didn't really get it. So a lot of times you have to experience things in order to get it. But I think luckily for me, I could hear something and I'd be like, let me just try it. Even though it might not make sense to my brain. And yes, I'll just like do little experiments or something. And I'm like, oh, that worked. Let me do a bigger experiment. And I know I tell y'all this story a lot about when one of my, well, she actually was my business partner, and she was just like, you know, money is just energy. And, you know, she's like, there's no account, there's no closet at the bank that says Arvette McClain, where you can open up that and all your money is in there. She's like, money is just a number on a computer screen. And so you can add zeros, like it's just energy. And I promise you, I didn't know what she meant then, and I don't really know what she means now. But in her saying that, and she was like, as long as you know how much money you have in your account, there's no room for it to be more than that. So as soon as you're sure about something, then you just cemented it. So if you're sure that you're poor, and so I was always that person. I would like literally balance my checkbook to the penny. And once she said that, I stopped just to see. That was my experiment or whatever. And shortly thereafter, you know, I had a building renovated. It was a warehouse, and we had it renovated into a school. And so we asked no questions like, well, how much is this gonna cost? Because we were just so excited. We were so excited about it. And yeah, I don't even think it crossed our mind, oh, we're gonna have to pay for this one day, right? And so I remember at the open house, old boy was like, okay, that's gonna be $250,000. And I was like, and I think I kept a straight face, but on the inside I was like, what? What? And I was like, oh, okay, hold on. And so I just went and wrote a check for $250,000 and handed it to him. And to this day, I never heard from him again. So this was back in 2001. So this was 21 years ago. So I assume the check cleared. I don't know. But it's not for me to know the house.
Exactly. We spend too much time trying to figure out the how. The answers are right around us. Just accept it.
All right, so anybody want to summarize?
I would say, just what we was talking about earlier, you don't really need to physically see your abundance. You know, if you believe in yourself, then everything's gonna fall in place for you.
Yeah, and I would just say to always remind yourself that you are worthy of everything that you do desire.
stacked up against me. If that's how you're vibrating, then that's how you're attracting. And so starting to change the thought process, starting to change your sense of worthiness and how you feel about yourself and your ability to do things, your ability to have things, your ability to recognize all the abundance that's already around you, and then start vibrating from that space. And so as you're vibrating from a bigger space and bigger space and bigger space, then you're going to attract more and more abundance into your life. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to chatting with you again. Until then, this is Arvette.